The UK and the US hand in hand at the White House. The image could not have been clearer as Donald Trump and Theresa May renewed the deep bond between their two nations. May said she was honoured to be the first world leader invited to Washington and could count the trip as a diplomatic coup after apparently outing Trump as backing NATO, despite his previous statements that the military alliance was obsolete.
On defence and security cooperation, we're united in our recognition of NATO as the bulwark of our collective defence, and today we've reaffirmed our unshakable commitment to this alliance. Mr. President, I think you confirmed that you're 100% behind NATO.
Both dodged a potentially sticky situation over Russian sanctions. May stood firmly in favour of sanctions while Trump was evasive.
We'll see what happens. As far as the sanctions, very early to be talking about that. But we look to have a great relationship with all countries, ideally. That won't necessarily happen, but if we can have a great relationship with Russia and with China and with all countries, I'm all for that. That would be a tremendous asset. No guarantees, but if we can, that would be a positive, not a negative.
The pair also discussed a bilateral trade agreement, but May's hands are tied on any formal arrangements until the UK leaves the EU. It didn't stop Trump from boasting that Brexit is a wonderful thing.
So we're watching this, we're watching these developments, we're getting the read right now how much of this might have been buoyed, and again, it's dealing with how to handle terror, what to do about waterboarding and torture and all of that. Louise Mensch joins us, Ashley Webster. A lot of this has to do with Theresa May in town, the British Prime Minister, who might have played, Ashley, possibly a role akin to, Maggie Thatcher. What do you think?
I do. I mean, listen, I thought the event today and the news conference went very well for Theresa May. She's the first world leader to kind of meet face-to-face with Mr. Trump, or President Trump, I should say. Let's face it, an unorthodox, unpredictable person, and there was a bit of trepidation going in. She got out with any unexpected headlines. I think there was a genuine warmth between the two leaders, and I think Downing Street overall will be pretty happy with how things went.
You know, they obviously got along, or appeared to, Louise, but the one thing I did notice is that she seemed to say, even though the president did not, that NATO has some value, and that the president seemed to agree with that, and on torture as well. But what are we to make of her influence and how this relationship is going?
Well, I think it's a two-way street, and I think that Donald Trump used his very considerable charm on the Prime Minister, and maybe vice versa. They really did seem to get along well, and I think Theresa May would say that Jim Mattis, who we're about to see sworn in by the President, was one of Donald Trump's best decisions. The United Kingdom has a prohibition against torture, so it would have hurt our intelligence sharing, and that's nothing that the CIA and the military want to see. So in a way, by Donald Trump, carrying a big stick but then listening to reason, he's getting the best of both possible worlds, and I think you saw a lot of future cooperation. The groundwork was laid in that speech. But for Theresa May to get her big win is she was able to say, Mr. President, you said you were 100% behind NATO, and that's what she gets to take home today.
It's what happens and what he says after that, right, Ashley? I mean, because sometimes he can clarify a position, but he was never anti-NATO, just the way the structure is that had to be examined. Yes. But where do you see this going, and the role of this relationship going forward, Ashley?
Well, with the United Kingdom, I think it will go fine. I think the statements he's made on NATO, I do think he'll pull back a little bit. I was interested when he was pushed on the issue of torture. He very deftly kind of sidestepped it and said, well, it's up to Defense Secretary Mattis I rely on him. He's the one who has the experience and expertise, so I will take his recommendations. Very smart, almost like a politician, I should say, the way he sidestepped that. But overall, Louise is right. The headlines in all the British media late this afternoon is that Donald Trump is 100% behind NATO. He really shook a few trees, if you like, when he said that perhaps NATO was out of date and needed updating, and people needed to contribute more. But make no mistake, there are things that Theresa May and Donald Trump don't agree on. The Iran deal, I think. Oh, sure. The torture, for sure. And NATO, possibly, and sanctions on Russia. I thought it was very clever that they hadn't talked about the Russian sanctions issue before the news conference today. They saved that for after, so it's
yeah, they did dance around a couple of things. But Louise, this is an area, real quickly, because they could talk very soon here, where Europe seems to like the idea of America first, right? I mean, America might reasserting itself, or at least saving the Europeans of that burden, seem to be a welcome development.
And I think even the British, you know, Neil, have agreed with Donald Trump that other people need to do their fair share. We are one of the few countries that will always put money and treasure and men and weapons behind it. Where's France? Where's Turkey?